John. Are you there, John?
I don't think he's there yet.
No. No.
He's working hard on it, though. I see it.
He's frustrated.
He's got determination in his eyes.
Well, we're gonna do it without the headphones, I guess. I'm not sure why it's not helping me, but all right, is that echo gone?
Yep. I see you got your Augusta shirt. Did you go this year to the Masters?
No, I was telling Jason Jarrell this on Sunday a couple weeks ago. This shirt is a blessing and a curse because it's great. It's a nice shirt, except for every time I wear it, I get that question, and then I have to tell people the depressing news that somebody got it for me. And then like their excitement about the story of the Masters that they wanted to hear based on that question, they're like, oh, okay, never mind. And it's just like it's a very deflating end to the conversation. So no, had a buddy that went on Saturday and Sunday, and had he works for a company that paid for him to go, and yeah, dude, he went Saturday and Sunday, went to Berkman's place both days and got to hang out there. So he had a good time.
I like 15 lineup questions there, follow-up questions
See?
for you. So
Happens every time, dude. It happens every time. I can see it in the body language. As soon as I say no, somebody got it for me. They're like, okay, no, that's no problem. Yeah, it's like that's how it feels.
it's like, oh, okay, yeah.
Do you guys do the lottery every year? Trying to get tickets?
Every year.
Every year, me too.
Yeah.
Maybe someday.
Hey, so I know we've talked about this before, but sleepovers for the kids. How do you guys handle those? We're kind of debating the best approach. Josh, you said you do sleep unders. What is that?
Well, that's how we started. We started with sleep unders, and so when the girls were young, so the idea that they could have friends over to the house and they would stay up late. We do everything you do in a sleepover with eating or having fun, and they could go get snacks, and there's popcorn and a movie or something, and they stay up late till 10 or 11 o'clock, and then they go home. And so that was what we called the sleep under. Since then, though, we have done sleepovers before. Most of them happen here at our house that we do sleepovers with it. But it's pretty consistent now that I will have a lot of kids in my house on the weekends. Not necessarily overnight, but just throughout the entire day. There are random kids in my pantry every afternoon. Usually I'll go in to go grab a snack or get a granola bar, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? Can you hand me one of those granola bars?
So they're actually in it. Like
they are. They're all throughout my house. And so our neighborhood is filled with little kids my daughter's age. And so a lot of little girls, in fact, my daughter's ages. And so they're here all the time. And now my oldest daughter, who's 14, she has some 8th grade friends that they love to come over, and they love to just hang out and cook and do stuff. And so they do that all the time now too.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just remember the days my sleepovers as a kid was they were not productive. They were not. most of the shenanigans I got into were at sleepovers. So I don't know. My kids aren't me. I need to accept that. They're
I also
better than
think
me.
I think there's a difference between boys and girls with stuff, and with what's going on and what you allow them to take with them to the sleepover or have as a part of it. And I think it's also the open conversations you create before that time of life begins or that's there. So there's always open conversation to talk about whatever's going on, whatever's happening, all of those things. And our girls have always been pretty good and trustworthy with that, and so we've kind of allowed that leash to grow along with them.
John, your kids aren't quite there yet, right? With their ages, they're younger.
Yeah, they're younger. So Colin is 5 and Madison is 8. So Madison's getting there. I think the boy and girl thing I think is very valid. Like I think I'd feel much safer with my daughter sleeping over. Like she just wants to. I could see her at a sleepover just being like, almost kind of like semi like at school. Like, hey, I'm around other adults that aren't my parents and other, like I'm in another environment. Like let's keep it straight on the straight and narrow. I can see my son very quickly. Once he gets comfortable, I think it would take him a little bit to warm up. But I feel like once he got comfortable at certain ages, I could very quickly see him being like, let's see how far we can push this thing, man. Like I'm going home in a few hours. You know what I'm saying? Like I can see like that, happening.
Yep.
It's now or never, man. Let's go.
Well, and my point of reference, and my point of reference for that thus far at 5 is like how he is on a t-ball field, like in open air. So like he, you know what I mean? Like it, like after like the first inning ish, he's like kind of warmed up and he's back in his element, and then he's with his buddies, and like by the third inning he's like, let's throw a rock at a kid, let's see what happens, you know what I'm saying? Like, let's just figure this out. And I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, and his body language will relay to me that like, oh, just, it's fine, it's, the game's gonna be over in 12 minutes, like, you know, let's spice this thing up. You know, it's the same kids hitting the same way. Let's just figure this out. And like, so I could very quickly see him taking that to another extreme. So the boy and girl dynamic, I'm sure, plays a big part. And to my son's credit, like, it's usually not like in a bad heart posture. It's just he's all boy. So he, like, you know, Luther, it's like they you know, it's like, dude, this isn't that high. Like, I can jump, like, it's fine. You know what I mean? Like, how sharp can this be? You know, that, like, and it's so unfiltered. It's just like there's with girls there's like 5 or 6 layers of depth to thought before something. With boys, they're like, I mean, hot is kind of relative, and then they just do, and then they're just like, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, I've noticed that just asking questions with my son. I'm like, what were you thinking? He's like, I don't think. I don't understand. My daughter can articulate, like, well, what I thought was this. And even if it's the wrong route, at least there is a route. My son is just like, I don't know, Dad. I was just bored and like, just did it. Like, what? Like, what? How? Yeah, that's what you got. And he's like confused why I even asked the question. He's like, yeah, man, like, I had some free time. It's fine. Great. I was at my son's preschool graduation last night, and one of his friends, his friends is a little girl that graduated with him, and the mom has her younger brothers too. And she came up to my wife and she goes, guys, boys are just different. Like, I don't know how to do this. Like, she's like, and because it's they don't think they're bored, so they do, like, it's just got to be motion all the time. And so, yeah, it's interesting.
Let's not keep our guests waiting here. We got a great guy lined up for our first interview today. He's a friend and my small group leader at Thrive Church. This guy was a military brat a long time ago.
Yeah. So the 3 longs is too many.
Hey, don't interrupt. He's a successful businessman, did 45 years in the biz. He was a volunteer firefighter paramedic for 20 years. He announces horse shows as a hobby. I definitely want to dig into that a little bit. He now helps companies implement leadership development programs for up-and-coming leaders. And not to mention, he also runs a local small business with his wife. Mark Newton, welcome to Faces of Fulshear.
Thanks, Will.
Hey, welcome, Mark.
Thank you, guys. Good to see you. Good to meet you, those that I haven't met. But good to see all of you.
It's a lot of stuff, honestly, that I did not know about you. I'm learning a lot of info. It's a treasure trove of details.
Right.
So with the Army brat thing, you spent is it most of your youth in Asia and Europe?
Yeah. 6 months after I was born, we moved to Japan, and my sister was born over there, and then, you know, but Dad was a career military Air Force guy, so he was just moving all the time. Every 3 years, 4 years at the most, you packed up everything and you moved to the next deal. Wow. And so that's what we did until I moved here. Actually, it was our final move was here to Houston, and this became home.
What age were you when that happened?
16. Yeah.
Most of your childhood growing up, then you got to experience life all over the
right.
world.
And you know what's funny about that, and I think about this often, because my brother's a little bit of the opposite. He's 10 years younger than I am, so his experience in life was all Houston. And so, you know, where you hear about going to 10-year reunions and go see your friends from elementary school and all that stuff, that is non-existent with myself and my sister. We have none of that connectivity. And in fact, really, we just started meeting, and having long-term relationships with people once we started coming to college and once we moved here to Houston. So we have it, but she and I have both traveled extensively and moved extensively during our professional careers. So even then, the circle of friends is very small, very tight. And but I wouldn't change the life for anything. My brother, on the other hand, still talks about his elementary school, still goes out with the guys from school. I don't know anything about that.
What did your dad do in the Air Force,
Is that
Mark?
right?
He was with the OSI, so everything he did was quiet and confidential, and we didn't talk about work very much. But gosh, he sure did enrich our lives and give us opportunities that you just don't have. Most people don't ever get a chance to do what we did, and so what came from that was you're not scared to move, you're not scared to meet new friends, you're not worried about getting up in front of a group because you had to do it all the time. So believe it or not, my brother is one of the best salespeople I've ever met, but he's totally different than my sister and I love him for that because he always brings things into perspective for both of us.
Did you get to see other cultures,
Yeah.
languages, stuff like that
Yeah.
when you were traveling?
Yeah. Yeah, of course, Japan. We were young there. My sister was actually born there, and then in Europe, in Spain and Germany, we lived it. Dad was one of those guys that didn't put you in on an Air Force base. We lived in the city, and in fact, we lived
Wow.
about 3 miles from downtown Madrid, right on the main drag. We just lived the life there. We went to American schools. But so we immersed. I would say that we immersed. My brother actually didn't speak English until we moved back here to the U.S. And so it was fantastic. It was a great experience, and I take it with me through my life now, even today.
Where did you pick up Spanish? Where did you pick up Spanish?
From Spain, yeah, from Spain.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
So do you have that th pronunciation in gracias?
Yeah. That's funny that's in certain parts of Spain. So just a quick funny aside. One of in my real world jobs here, I was asked to go to South America and run South American operations for a company. And I had spent, I'd lived here in Houston. You speak kind of this non-professional Spanish all the time around here. And so I remember the first time I went down there, I had to meet with a bank to establish a line of credit. And the entire meeting was in Spanish. And I was like, OMG, I cannot remember. Now we're talking about lines of credit and, default rates and all that. Luckily, I had a guy with me who was my interpreter, at least for them. And I got through it. But the guy who was running at the bank, the president of the bank, when we were all done, he broke into English just like the four of us are speaking right now. He was a graduate of Stanford, but he ran and he said, man, I was just trying to make sure that you'd be able to have some fun with us as we get to meet each other. I said, well, I don't know if I'd call that fun, but we ended up with a great relationship. Matter of fact, still talk to this day. So it was really kind of funny.
So you were 45, you said after 45 years you retired, and what did you do? What was your work? What was your career?
My primary role after about 10 years was I became a turnaround guy. So I'd go into underperforming organizations that may have be having some difficulties, and go in and try to help them right the ship, so to speak, whether it was sales or operations or P&Ls or whatever the case may be. So that was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. That took me to places like Minneapolis and Tampa, and these are where we moved: Des Moines, Iowa, and Kansas City, and Dallas, and so we moved all around the country. Pam and I were talking the other day. We moved 17 times since we've been married, and but really, I think you guys would understand this. That was just a carryover from my early life. I mean, for me, moving was no big deal. So when somebody called and said, "Hey, would you be interested in this opportunity?" and I'd say, "Well, sure, let's talk about it." And they'd say, "Oh, well, by the way, you got to move to Minneapolis." I'd be like, "Okay, well, I got to move to Minneapolis," where some people will be, "Oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do with the house and the kids?" Well, bottom line is, everybody comes with you. And so that was helpful in that part of my career for sure. So that was really it. I say that a little tongue in cheek. The turnaround business is a lot of fun. It's a lot of demand. But through that, I did a lot of leadership development with the teams and a lot of strategy sessions and all that. So it really equipped me very nicely for really being able to get into a business and helping them, or an organization, and help them develop some strategies and some leadership development for succession planning. Think about how many of us. I think about even non-for-profits, churches. You can just kind of go down the line that just really don't spend quality time doing that. And the next thing they know is it's time for somebody to leave, or somebody leaves unexpectedly, and they've got a big void in their hands. So anyhow, that was most of my career. Is what I did.
That's great. It's really good to look at and to think about. You're exactly right. Even Kristen and I now, just in our early 40s, we're already starting to have to think, okay, what does this look like in the next 10 years to have a succession plan, whether that's someone on staff, or what does that look like for us as we go and grow? Because, in corporations, I know it might be different, but at some point you tend to get a little more irrelevant in terms of your ability to grow the organization or to move it forward in its mission.
Yeah.
And so how do you,
Yeah,
how do you challenge
it's
that?
funny you say that, Josh, because I think churches are pretty good reflections of the business community, with one fairly significant difference, and that is that you got a bunch of volunteers. So, volunteers don't react quite the same way that employees do. In 1,000 employees, if you write an email and say we need to do this tomorrow, it gets, for the most part, it gets done. Or in a church, you may say that, and maybe somebody will read it, and maybe somebody will do it. And for me, getting involved in some leadership stuff with some churches was kind of cool, right? Because it really taught me that, and I had to readjust my thinking that not everybody is going to react to you the same way,
That's true.
all the time. So anyhow, yeah, no, it's I think developing people is the most underrated requirement for leaders. It's something that they don't spend enough time on, and really have a plan. Like what does that really look like, so that you can hit the target and say, I'm going. I mean, I think about you. You guys are building the church, and oh my gosh, it's exploding, and there could be needs for you to add more locations and all that stuff. So, not about you leaving. It's how do I replicate you time over time, and that's a hard thing to do, man. That's really hard. So yeah.
So are you using that now? I guess that's my understanding, is you're taking what you did in your career as far as leader development, and then you're currently working, or you're
No.
currently using that in some way to develop leaders?
Yeah, so over 40 years, you meet a lot of people and get to know a lot of people. So in September, a couple of you know this, I think. I think Josh, you know this, but I had open heart surgery, which was totally unexpected, and it gave me a chance to really sit down and say what is important. Not because I was fearful of dying, guys. That wasn't the issue. The issue is that I wanted to devote time and energy into things that I'm a little more passionate about. I got the whole let's go to work for corporate America and fight that fight. It's boring at best and ridiculous in the worst. So
Let's be honest, Mark.
I spent 3 months kind of rehabilitating and all that stuff, and I remember telling Pam, I said, I really don't think I want to go back. I don't think I want that grind. And I know that God was working on that with me. I mean, there's no doubt He was beating me up and down, slapping me on the head and stuff. But it really forced me into that thought process. So funny thing, I went to work. I did end up going back to work for 1 week. And at the end of the week, I called my boss and I said, dude, I just can't, I'm not interested, not anymore. It was just gone. So, so I retired. And, but in retirement, you can kind of make two choices. You can sit around and turn into a blob and die pretty quickly, I think, and become really irrelevant. or you can find those things that you're passionate about and try to do it. So, for an example, been able to dedicate a lot more time to the men's group, which I love. I get to study differently than I used to because I was always force feeding my studies into certain times, certain parameters every day. Now I can do it a little bit more. Some friends of mine have asked me to, help them with leadership development and help them with coaching and counseling and doing some sales strategies and growth strategies. So I've been doing that. That's really what I've been doing. Now, most importantly, I've been working with Pam. She's got her business here, and ever since COVID, she had decided not to have a bunch of employees, so she was doing it all herself. And I said, well, you know what? There's nothing better than the two of us being together and doing our thing together. So I do every day with her. Her assignments to me. I'm an employee. I get paid very poorly, and but it's a great life. It's a super life.
Mark, I am definitely an advocate for working with your wife if you can.
Yeah.
It is excellent, and I enjoy doing it. What is it though that your wife does? What is the company that she runs, and what do they do?
Yeah. So 8 years ago, when we moved here to where we are today, we had lived in Richmond, and I was driving on a whim. There's actually a house that we owned literally 3 blocks away from here that was on 5 acres, and we had built a barn. And we built 2 barns and a riding arena because Pam trained and showed horses. That's what she did for a living. And when we moved, we sold it, and it is now the Nueva Vida Baptist Church, Hispanic Baptist Church. It's now a church. I told Pam, I said, God had much bigger plans for that place than you and me training horses in it. And so we love this neighborhood, and I happened to be driving down the street, and lo and behold, there was this house. I'll cut this short, and we bought this place, and it's on a little over an acre, and there was a second building on it, and we started up a dog boarding business. Pam did, and her commute is 20 steps over to the place, and that's what she's been doing for the last 8 years. She's grown a great little business. It's very personal. It's not big and commercial. You guys see some of the bigger commercial ones out there. That's just not her gig. That's not her deal. She's much more personalized in her services, etc. And so that's what she does. And so I'd love to tell you I have this really sophisticated job, but dogs, when they go outside multiple times a day, they do several things, and I'm in charge of making sure that those several things are not apparent. And so I have all kinds of very fancy titles. I'm trying to think of one that I could work on with LinkedIn, but I haven't quite figured it out yet. So that's my job, man, and I do a good job of that. And I'm outside. I walk about 13,000 steps a day. It's fantastic. It's like a little bit of everything built in. So that's what she does, Josh. Dog boarding business, and a good one.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's really cool.
That's awesome. Hey, Mark, I'm curious, with all your experience and your travels and your different roles, and now you're, in a private small business with your wife and a lot of volunteer work, like, I think, and I couldn't agree more with what you said, like, people development, I think, is one of the most under evolved part of a lot of organizations, business or otherwise. I'm curious just kind of what you have seen over your career from maybe some people that have done it right, that what key pieces they've put together in their people development strategies that have moved the needle forward for organizations to have a bigger impact when that's done well.
Yeah. Okay, great question, and I'll give you my kind of couple of the top ones. First off is most leaders are scared to set expectations. And expectations can be onerous or whatever the case may be, but if they're your expectations, guess what? They're your expectations.
Sure.
And what I found over time is that people have these expectations, but they're not good at communicating them to the people that are around them. And by doing so, it's always a guessing game for those employees in terms of what is really going to happen reactionary wise, right? And I've seen both sides of it. Leaders with expectations that I thought were goofy, and leaders with expectations that were very low. Interestingly, the guys that were really goofy got much better results, and it's because they were really goofy. They knew exactly what they wanted. They really know what they want. And the people that work for them really know what they want and expect. And if they're there, they understand the expectations, so they move on, and they tend to get a much better result than the guy that's a little bit fluid on expectations. Or, hey, I need you to be here at 8, and you come rolling in at 8:15. He's upset, but he kind of cools it, doesn't worry about it. All of a sudden, he's got you on a line for something else. So that's number one. Number two is consistency. Um, uh, so I think a lot of my faith uh, has transformed over the years into running a business and running businesses. And so, for an example, like I'm really super anal about reading my Bible and spending time with God every morning before anybody else gets one iota of a second of time with me. Not dogs, TV, what, nobody, me and God. And I found that as I did that, my journey changed significantly from what it had been. So, ergo, you have to be consistent. And you know, you can make a decision that you're either going to do this every day, and if you're going to do it, and it's important enough, then you will have good results. So consistency, right? Setting clear expectations. And then number three is telling people how they're doing. Toughest conversation in the world is telling somebody that you like a lot, that you may have in line, you think they could be your next you, and you have to sit down and say, dude, you're really missing the spot here. You're really hitting it here. There's a great tool out there called a 360. And for those of you that are in business, you kind of know what the deal is. For those of you that have ever seen it, it is a fantastic tool. And if I recommend it highly to all of the execs that I work with, is do a 360. Make sure it's safe. If you aren't in a safe environment, your 360 will be a little bit funky the first time. But if you're relatively in a safe environment, most people will hedge their bets a little bit on how they answer. But if they know that if they give you clear feedback and you can come back to them and have a great conversation and they see change, guess what? You're going to be amazed at what happens to the organization. So those are the three kind of top things that I see for leaders that generally, if you said check the box, where would you say your box needs to be checked? It's those three places.
Yeah, I
Hey,
love that.
last but not least, just as a final comment on that. So a great exercise that I do when I start working with somebody is I ask them to sit down with a piece of paper and a pencil, and over the course of a day, everything that they do every minute, I want them to write it down. Right? I just want to make a note, not a dissertation, just blah 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 blah. And then I set an appointment with them the next day to look at what happened that day. And you would be amazed at how much time people spend doing stuff not related to their job.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be shocked. I mean,
Yeah.
there are people who will spend 70% of their time doing things not related to getting the results that they're looking for. It's the greatest exercise in the world. If you're bored someday and you want to try it, try it. Just write it down. What are you doing and what are your goals? And you'd be surprised how much grabs you and runs you away from it. And that's my fourth little. That's my one thing that if a leader just isn't going to pay attention, I go, well, do this, try this, and at least do this occasionally, and I think you'll be fine.
Yeah, I love that. The communication of expectations. Sometimes I think as leaders we take for granted that we've said it once, so they've heard it, and they understand it and they've absorbed it. It's kind of, and I think a lot of what you just said goes right along with the four of us are all parents, and so I think that can go along with the parenting journey as well, where it's like sometimes when we set an expectation and we've said it once or twice, we think it's understood and therefore should be copy paste, and we're all men of faith, and I think it's also interesting that like Jesus repeated himself a lot.
Right.
And I think that's a pretty important lesson from a pretty important person. Is he's kind of the chief repeater if you read the New Testament and his stories in the Gospels, and And I love that you saw that in the real in your experience as leaders that you ran into. So
Yeah, just in
I'm
case you think you're sitting out there on an island, I don't know about you guys, but I read an awful lot in the Bible about God telling people, "Hey, here's what I expect." And funny thing about those guys, man, they'll wake up one day, go, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," and the next day they're off they're off the rails again. And
yeah.
and you just have to be willing to understand that that's just how we are, man. And you got to manage it and bring people to you instead of you trying to go to the people. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Yeah.
You
Oh
got
yeah.
to bring people into your way of thought, uh, but also provide a pathway for them to be able to give you feedback. The other thing that I've seen in typically underperforming locations and companies is they surround themselves with a bunch of yes men
Mm.
and or women. And when that happens, you feel really great after a meeting. Oh my gosh, everybody loves it, and the idea was fantastic. Wonder why it's failing? Must be because they're dumb and I'm not, or whatever. But it turns out that if you can have somebody who can really feel comfortable enough, or somebody sit down and talk to you and say, this is what I really think,
Yeah.
and have you tried this? It helps.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I think as you're talking, I think of the story in the Bible. It's like we as leaders have to be secure enough for people to. I think we get better when people are telling us the truth, like the blessings in
Absolutely.
the honesty. And I think about the story in the Bible where Jesus is trying to heal a guy that's blind, and I think he's, spits in his eye or rubs mud on his eyes or whatever, and he's tells him to go wash in the pool. And after he comes back, he says, I see, but I see men as trees. And
Right.
I just wonder in that story, if he wasn't honest with his rabbi, would he have gotten the full blessing of then Jesus touching him again and being fully healed? And I think that there's so much beauty in the honesty that we can both provide and be willing to be provided. And if we create the environment within our organization, and that's a hard thing, right? As a leader to
Yeah.
be honest about the environment we are creating. We all think we create great environments. We all think we all have this, rose-colored glasses sometimes in the environments we create. But man, like being willing for people to just know that they can be honest to get the full blessing of our ability as leaders. That story just came to mind, and I'm sure you've seen that even applied in your volunteer firefighter
Oh yeah.
journey, and like all that stuff is probably all that stuff is probably woven into that part of your journey too.
Well, it strikes me as you were saying that, as a parent. So my daughter, well, my wife is not the same person as I am. So, but I had very clear expectations. Like, hey, guess what? We're not going to watch any movies that are inappropriate. Period. The end. We're not going to not only watch them in our house. We're not going to even have them in the house. Does that make sense to you? In other words, that just doesn't happen. You don't get to be home late. It wasn't 500 things because they won't react to 500. But those 5 or 6 non-negotiables are 5 or 6 non-negotiables, and that's the same thing with leaders. You got to have your non-negotiables, and if one of those is be here on time. I know that's super simplistic, but if that's it, then that's a non-negotiable. And if it is, then it's non-negotiable. And I kind of live in this 3-strike rule. I'll say it once. I'll talk to you one more time about it, but I'm going to let you know if it happens again, you're out. And the third time, you will be gone. And it seems harsh. It's really hard for people to get their head around that. But if you don't do that, suddenly, I think you guys were talking about kids today. My daughter and her husband have 3 grandkids, or 3 kids, and those grandkids. I watch them and I go, "Holy crowley, that's a whole different mess of people right there than the one I raised." But you know what? Toby is an expectation setter. My son-in-law, he sets expectations, and Tiffany, like her mom, a lot more understanding, a lot softer on delivery. Not Toby, but they know what those non-negotiables are, and I just think that's the right way to go.
What did you do? So before this, I don't know if you heard us earlier talking about it, but sleepovers.
Uh,
So, what did you do raising your daughter for sleepovers? If she wanted to have a sleepover at your house or go have a sleepover somewhere else, did you allow that, and to what extent?
well, yeah, I trusted Tiffany I got to tell you, I never distrusted her. Does that make sense, guys? You know, in other words, I think if they sense that you don't trust them, then you're always on a defensive. And she never, I shouldn't say never, she never caused me not to trust her. So having a sleepover over was no big deal. Why? Because as a firefighter and a paramedic, I know a lot of cops. There was nothing going to happen in that house that I didn't know about if I wasn't there. Period. The end. And she knew that, and I knew that. So that was cool. But I will say that the sleepover at somebody else's house was what caught me off guard, in all honesty. Because here we were trying to make sure not that she would be a prude, but that there were just certain things I didn't want her exposed to that I didn't expose her to them. You know what I mean? And so, like as an example, R-rated movies. We just had this deal: no R-rated movies. Period. The end. None. 0 zip. One day she comes home from a sleepover with her best friend, and we're talking about what they did. Guess what they did with a sleepover? They watched this movie that's clearly R-rated. I was like, what in the world? You know what it was? I'd forgotten, to be honest, to set those expectations with my daughter's friends' parents. So I went over and I said, listen, we love her, you know, blah, 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 all those guys, but we don't allow Tiffany to watch these kinds of movies. And so I'd appreciate it if when she comes over, you watch any movie you want to, but don't let it be anything from here up. And they were like, oh gosh, well, we're really sorry, etc. And I never had that problem again with that. So I think Luther, and you know, and listen, I'm thinking you guys are raising kids, and guess what? They got a pretty bloody good foundation. No matter what, they're going to go play around and do some crazy things. But if at the end of the day, they're going to hear your voice in the background, they're going to know. And if you've solidly done what you needed to do, then God will watch over them. That's all I say. That's what I told Pam. God's got her now. It's not me. So, but I'm telling you, when Tiffany was older, she'd come up and it was not very seldom that she would say, you know what? I really appreciated this. Or I understand now why you said this. And at the time, she didn't understand it. But it wasn't my job to make her understand. It was my job for her to understand that that was unacceptable. And
It's it.
Go ahead.
It's interesting that you talk about the conversation and communication you have with parents as well, with other parents, with your kids. And I think that's one thing that we found in our group. I've got 3 girls in our group with the girls, with their friends. If we're communicating as parents together and kind of setting some boundaries as a community around them, that's what's been really beneficial. So for our girls, you know, social media is off limits for them. And so that's not just for our girls, though. We kind of tried to set that with the community of their friends around them, with the parents, and all having this conversation and talk. And that's been really helpful because now the girls don't really ask for it. They're not craving it. They're not going, because they know, like, all of them, this is kind of the boundary, this is the rule, and it kind of goes with that expectation. They know that expectation, so they're not constantly trying to push it and push it and push it and push it. And we've put them in a community where they have kind of a like fence, or a like set of expectations around them, and that's been really beneficial as well. And that's, I think, also helped us to say, hey, we trust that our kids can go have a sleepover at this place because we've already preset what those boundaries or expectations look like.
Couldn't agree more, man.
What do you mean? Is that like being friends with the parents of their friends? You say community. What is that? What do you mean?
Yeah,
by that?
so
you set up a community.
We have, in terms of, we are friends with our kids' friends, and so if there's a question that they're going to come have a sleepover at their house, they're going to be friends with us, or we're gonna have communication with them. And again, we have tried to pre-set up with this crew. It's not every friend that our kids have, but it's those friends where they're going to have the sleepovers or the connections with. We have parents have said, hey, here's the rules that we've established. What do you guys think about that? What do we think about as we come together? This would be really easy to help us parent in community with one another if we kind of start to establish these guardrails with one another in the midst of it. And so we've kind of come to an understanding together through conversation. And maybe some of the parents are saying, yeah, I wouldn't have put that strict of rules on it, but I'll do that because I see the benefit. And others would say, you know, the other side of it. But in our crew, in this group that we have, that our girls are a part of, it's been really beneficial, and all the parents have kind of stayed with it. And I know my oldest is only 14, so I haven't experienced the full teenage years yet, but I know
Welcome.
that's coming.
Welcome,
That's
brother.
coming
Welcome.
with the but so far, I like where it's headed.
Hey, look, I'll just say this. I'm really shocked. I know, of course, I know about the three girls because I only had one, and you can see what I have on top of my head. You're looking good, brother. But I will say that there is an inflection point. There was with Tiffany, but there, and so let's go back to business just for a second. There's an inflection point when you're developing people, or when you're doing a deal, or whatever the case may be, where they're now on their own. They've got to they're going to make independent decisions, and the only thing you can rely on is what you did for the previous 15 years and what they have taken away from that. Because as much as I ensured that Tiffany was in a safe environment as much as possible. As she got older, the safety of that environment changed because there was more independence. You know, when I control the car that you get in and the bicycle that you ride and all that, that's fantastic. But the minute that goes and that inflection point moves, where she's with somebody else on her own, man, that took my hair and set it on fire a couple of times. But I'm so thankful that she paid some attention. And I'm sure she experimented with stuff and all that, but I left that all to, just to be honest with you guys, I left it to God. I said, I've done what I can do. Only you can ride with her in that car.
Yeah.
You know?
Somebody asked me the other day that has little kids, like, is it harder when they're older or when they're younger? It's hard when they're younger because they can't communicate, like, what's wrong or whatever, but you control them so much more. Now it's like, all you can do is worry. Like, all you can do is just sit at home and worry. Hopefully they're putting into practice all the things that you taught them, but there's nothing, it's like, I'll sit down and talk to my boys, and I think they're pretty good at communicating and talking about what they have going on, but man, I did not expect this phase as a parent of, like, it's hands off and trusting, just like, I don't know, it kind of taken me off guard, to be honest. Just entering it. My oldest will be going into high school, and then my other one's in 8th. So, wow.
Yeah.
It's a ride.
It is that for sure.
I think there's definitely lessons in there from both, though, of the ability to let them fail. Whether that's an employee at work, how are you giving them environments where they can fail small to learn from that, so that later on they're not making the larger things that have more affect on their life or on the business.
That's such a great point. Fail small. My boss had taught me that. Said, look, Mark, he said, just give small stuff, man, because if they fail, it doesn't drive the company down into the dirt. He was so right about that. So that's a great point, Josh, for sure.
That's what I'm trying to do now. So the other day it was just Mother's Day just passed, right? So I was like, hey boys, you need to get your mom something for Mother's Day. So you have until end of day Wednesday to figure out what you're going to get for your mom for Mother's
Setting
Day.
the expectation. There you go.
And after end of day Wednesday, you will have downtime on your phone, which is I shut down their phone. They can only contact us, me and my wife, and their grandparents and stuff. So you'll be on downtime indefinitely until you figure that out, if you don't have a gift by end of day Wednesday. So sure enough, Wednesday passed. Thursday morning, they wake up. Hey Dad, my phone's not working. What's wrong? I was like, why is your phone not working? You tell me. And within 20 minutes, their mom had a gift.
That's right.
Order on Amazon here Saturday, the day before Mother's Day. So.
That's
Always.
good.
That's great.
I feel like that's also a boy trait, Luther, more than a girl trait. My daughter would have been like, "Can I do it right now?" My son would have been like, "When is Mother's Day?" Sunday feels like a long way off from Wednesday. So like those are the dynamics we were talking about before.
That's so true. That's so true.
I love what you said too, Mark, about like, I love what you did when your daughter came home from her friend's house and crossed a boundary that you and your family had set. The first thing you did after the initial reaction was look inward. And I think I struggle to do that sometimes as a parent and as a leader, especially when I feel like it is a standard that has been set. I think I miss that sometimes as a parent and a leader, where I will I will not as quickly look inward to say, what could I have done better as that parent or leader to set my child or employee up for success, to keep that standard, and just assuming the best, that they didn't, it's not like they're going out trying to do something crossing the family standard, but it's just like, hey, you took the step as the leader of your family to say, man, what did I miss? And I think it's so easy sometimes as somebody that's leading a family or organization or whatever, to say, but this is kind of our code. This is who we are, and yet something was still missed enough to where this happened at another place. And I think it's just, man, when you said that hit me pretty hard, as as somebody who's raising young kids, and it's really easy to just say, I thought I've told, I feel like every parent has said this one time or another. It's like, we've talked about this 100 times. Like, what in the world, right? Like, you've asked, I've said no 3,000 times at this point, and now the first time you're at your friend's house, you do, like, what is the deal? It's very easy as again, parent or leader, to just say, what is, this is your fault type of thing. And I'm not saying that there's no accountability, but I think it's such a good lesson for us, to be reminded that it's like, look, there's always something we can be doing better. There's always something that we could be improving to make it easier for people to, because I just think it's like, I think that people want to step up to better and excellence and standards. And like, I really believe that's, and we live in a world where, I'm sure you've seen the evolution of this, Mark, over your 40 plus years in business. It's like, we live in a world where a lot of leaders just think people are out to like get free money and do as little work as possible and not have it. And I don't know what you found, but I found a lot of people like to work for organizations with high standards, high values, high levels of excellence, high levels of always wanting to do the next right thing, always wanting to get better, always wanting to take their game to the next level. And I think if we assume that of people, then it's easier to look inward and say, I've done something, I've missed something that hasn't allowed you to be able to execute at that highest level. Let me look at myself as the leader or the parent first. And I just love what you shared there.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Just a couple of things. Stephen Covey writes The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'm sure you guys, if you haven't cracked the book, you've at least seen it, or maybe you've read it. But that book by itself, I'll never forget reading that book, because I was on my way to Minneapolis to meet with a significant customer and an operation that was having a lot of problems, and I read the book on the way up. And man, that book turned me around a lot. And it was mainly because it really wasn't, Covey really puts it on you. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's, hey man, don't spend all this time pointing the finger out. Look in. And so my common practice was always, every day I would look in the mirror and say, could I have done something better or different? And then the other thing was, I think he taught me a lot in that particular book about, sometimes as leaders, we will bounce down to that group of people who are immediately around us, like the assistant GM, the chief, whatever, and or your direct reports. But when you take just that next step below that and spend a little bit of time with the people underneath that group, you're amazed at what you hear. And when you hear that stuff, you're like, oh, and I'm missing this, dude. And so anyhow, I one thing I learned, Luther, you asked me earlier. So if I looked at the two most impactful things that my life was impacted by, other than moving and stuff, was being a firefighter, being a paramedic. And here's some quick reasons why. First, number one, you go run into that deal fast, man. You got lights, you got sirens, you got people screaming and yelling. You'd be shocked at what happens in those trucks if you're going to a live fire. And there's all kinds of stuff going on, a lot of goofing off. But then when you get there, you know it's all business. But the worst thing you can do is go running in, flame on fire, and just start doing stuff. That's the worst thing you can do, even though it's your immediate reaction. The house is on fire. Get yourself out there. Go get that. Go run in that house. Sometimes you get yourself killed doing it. So what? And the same thing with being a paramedic. You can run to the scene. Yeah, it's a traffic accident. Yeah, there's a lot of people in trouble. No, there's somebody having a heart attack. But you still have to process quickly what's going on. So what I try to tell leaders is you don't need to be a firefighter. Just sit back and assess what you've got going on, and then you make an attack plan to go in and start to work on how you fix it or stop it, or and whatever the case may be. And those are really that taught me more about being in business and being in life and not panicking about stuff, because even to this day, when something significant goes down, up to and including my surgery, is, man, I knew people that had a lot worse day than that. And my day's looking pretty good, comparatively speaking. So anyhow, that's those are a couple of things that came away from my time in the fire service.
Do you have any fun or interesting stories that came out of that? Anything like
That's
like,
what I was going to ask you.
maybe
I would say you get a little bit goofy when you're in that deal about what's funny and what's exciting. Although I will say that there's nothing better in life than bringing a baby into this world. There's nothing better than that. I don't think I ever had a thrill bigger than actually participating in that. And there's nothing quite as humbling as watching somebody leave. So both ends of the spectrum, met by the same guy, maybe on different shifts or different months or whatever the case may be. But both of them are equally as jaw-dropping. One with super joy, and one the exact opposite for the family and for you. Obviously you don't want that to happen, but really helps put life in perspective, to be honest with you. The old, when Jesus tells us to, enjoy what we've got right now, that's serious business stuff. That's serious business. You need to, because you don't know when you're going to go to the next place. And my gosh, it would be terrible for you to have wasted great time here on earth, is all I can say.
Well, we don't have too much time left. I want to ask you about the horse announcing.
Oh.
Is it paint? Did I read that right?
Yeah.
Paint, horse paint show. What is that? Tell me about that.
So look, when Pam was showing and training horses, guess what I did when we first started? And this was in Denver when we lived up there. And I'd sit there and it'd be an all-day show, and I'd be sitting there watching her do it, and I was like, I'm bored out of my gourd. So I used to announce swim meets here in Houston, and so I went up to a guy one day. I said, "What's it take? Would you like some help announcing this horse show thing? 'Cause it seems pretty simple." So from that very beginning, that moderate little beginning, for the last 30 years, I've announced horse shows, and I announce about 7 a year. And they're all fairly big. They're primarily paint horses and quarter horses. And even though Pam stopped, I continued to announce because it's something that I enjoy. It's a total break. I used to use it because I didn't think 1 second about business. I didn't think anything about, what was going on in the world. It was all about that. And that escape still happens when I'm announcing today. Is it does give me a little refresh time to just not think about anything except that particular event. So I've been doing that for years. I just got finished with a 1-week quarter horse show up in Waco. And now I'll take a couple of months, and then starting this fall, we'll go back into the work. So, yeah, that's it. That's what I do.
What's that What's that look like? What's announcing at a horse show? What does that look
Yeah.
like? Are you describing the horse? Or are you
No,
describing?
no. So
Your voice too?
no, I do
Change
not
your
wear
voice
a
to be like,
suit. No,
this is Mark
no, I
Hickey.
don't do all of that stuff either. No. These shows are all performance shows. So what you have is kids and adults with horses in different disciplines showing their horse to judges and those judges deciding who they like best out of each class. Usually there's, I don't know, 200 classes in a weekend, and usually you've got 1,000 entries. And what I really love is a lot of parents have moved to horse showing instead of kids being on travel volleyball and stuff like that because it's uber competitive. It's also, I think you said it earlier, Josh, it's kind of like having a family, right? Because these people go around the country, they all show, blah, blah, blah. So they begin to know each other. Many of them are homeschooled. Many of them are homeschooled. And it just kind of becomes a life for those teens and those young. We've got kids as young as 7 showing, and then adults as old as 80 showing. So it's kind of fun. It's kind of cool. If all 3 of you came up to one and went to one, you said, "Okay, I'm going to come up there to that Waco show and I'm going to watch that Waco show." You'd last 8 to 10 minutes because it's kind of like watching paint dry in most cases. But if you're a participant or you're announcing it, it goes pretty quick. So anyhow, that's the story on horse showing.
Well, that's great. And
Do
I'm
you wear
sure.
a cowboy hat? Is the question. Do you wear a cowboy hat?
Occasionally, only on the bigger shows. Yeah, no,
Nice.
yeah.
Mustache deserves a cowboy hat.
I do understand that probably does give you a break from your custodial landscape executive
Oh.
position with your
Oh,
wife.
we got a title for you, Mark.
I'm going to write that title down. You may see that on LinkedIn. Custodial landscaping. I wonder if that would attract anybody to use me for leadership development.
Thinking, I did want to come back to this because I mean it's really the question of the whole interview here. So, you kind of skimmed over it. You're the de-humper? Is that what it is with these dogs? So the dogs.
I'm not sure you can say that on a podcast.
That's
I'm sure
You said the
this
dogs.
podcast just went R.
it. Just went R.
Yeah. Do what? What? So if you'll explain the de-humper thing.
I gotta explain it now.
Okay.
Break it down, Luther.
So-
Just break that down for us, if you can help us out.
So you intercede
No.
when
Oh no. I'll make
when
like
things get hot.
no.
between the canines.
No. You have way
Because you said
over.
you let the dogs out, and there's only a few things that they do, and then you never expounded on
Right.
that. So I'm like, well.
Okay, so I'll put it in words that I believe are appropriate for the podcast. Is that I am the chief pooper scooper picker up.
There we go. We're bringing it back to PG-13, Mark. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, as exotic as you made it sound, Luther, it's not that. It's not.
What? So this where we take our dog, it has a little camera, right? And so there's somebody who stands out there
Yeah,
with like a wet floor sign,
yeah.
and essentially just puts it in between the dogs if they engage
Oh, is that right?
in any way.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, listen.
Something more
To
fighting.
each their own. We manage that a little bit
That's
differently,
somebody's job.
but we don't. We tend to really watch that stuff pretty close, anyhow. So anyhow.
That's great. All right, Mark. Well, we appreciate it. I mean, like I said, that's it's great to get to know you a little better. Huge background, amazing. Like I said, a treasure trove of information and experience, and it's been great to have this time. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank
Thanks
you
spending some
guys.
time with us.
Thank you guys. You know what I appreciate about this podcast, and this is just discussion. Really, I don't think about it as a podcast, just discussion. How cool is it to have 4 guys who believe in God, who have like interests and like desires, and even though we come from totally different locations and backgrounds, we're all connected magically and mercifully together, and I just love that. That's my favorite part of these kinds of things. So I appreciate your time and your guidance, and look forward to watching this on. You've got some more coming up, so I'll be looking forward to seeing what you guys do.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna bail off.
Expectations. I like that. I like how he put that and had a lot to say when it comes to leadership.
I think it was right up John's alley with all the leadership topics.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are more in leadership than they think. I think people lead people. We just happen to be in an influence series. Ironic. I think people lead people more than they think they do, and I think it's whether you're in a position, title, whatever. I think it's just that's just good life advice. Like having expectations for yourself. How do you lead yourself? How do you lead and steward, your resources, time, all that good stuff. So I love that perspective.
And it was interesting how much of that came right back to the family as well. And so it's like,
Yeah.
well, what we do with our employees, how much of that can come back onto the family, which was interesting. And then John, you had that zinger when it came to the idea of how you put it on yourself, of thinking that through. I'm like, oh, that was so good. The idea of like how if something goes awry or something goes different, what part did I play in creating that scenario or creating that outcome?
Huge. Yeah, and what I love about this, like these conversations are so important too, because I'm just such a big believer that like sometimes you just need somebody to be able to bring you up out of the day to day and just like like him talking. He just looked at it as just having a conversation, but because we were just an audience member to his thought process of 40 plus years in leadership and parenting and travel and all of his experiences, like it just helped me come up a level higher as a parent and as a leader. And it's almost impossible to get that perspective by myself. It's almost impossible to like be able to rise out of family with 5 and 8 year old and baseball and preschool, and you know what I mean? Like it's almost impossible for me to be able to do that cognitively, and be willing or be able enough to be able to sit in the reality of the world at a 40,000 foot view versus in my day to day. Like it's just almost impossible to do that. And so that's what I love about these conversations. And I think we'll continue to see in our interviews with people is like, it'll allow them to be able to sow into our community with their expertise that they probably take for granted because they just live in it. Right. And hopefully vice versa. Maybe we can, sow into our guests and our listeners too. So, it's what a great way to kick it off.
I mean, the experience that he's had is just so much perspective. I mean, being a firefighter, paramedic, businessman, I mean, living all over the world. Jeez. I mean, like I said, I didn't know all that about him. It's that you interact with people all the time. You just don't realize how much background is there. And he really appreciates, you seems like the type of guy who appreciates every day. Who just has that perspective where each day is its own, and he's been through so much. He just really values life. That's cool.
Yeah.
Take a lot away from that.
Good first one. That's
All
for
right,
sure.
fellas. Yeah, good first one. All right. Well, I don't know how we sign off. We said, I actually have a dad joke. I only know one dad joke that I use all the time. So I'm going to expend it here on
I like
the first one. Okay. All right. What has 4 wheels and flies?
Don't know.
A garbage truck.
Oh, that was good. I like that.
There it is.
That's a good one.
You guys can use it.
The groaners.
You guys
That's
can-
what we're gonna sign off with, huh? A groan.
The good-
Groan of a dad joke. That's fun. That's good. I love some dad jokes. I love the humor of it.
This has been Faces of Fulshear. Your hosts today were Josh Cullen, John Harper, and Luther Berry. Sound and editing for Faces of Fulshear were meticulously mastered by yours truly. As always, thank you for joining us for this episode, and remember, stay classy, Fulshear.